Okay, welcome back. I was thinking another application of smart cities. We were chatting about houses there during the lunch break, and another how many of you guys go on vacation, especially in the dead of winter, and you hope that it doesn't turn -30 and water pipes don't freeze, and you end up with a leak, right? And that's always a worry whenever people, especially during winter, and there's really, I think there's technology out there right now, and it's applied in the industrial side that can detect leaks and things like that. So there's really no reason if there's a water leak in your house that a system, shouldn't have this, that there should be sensors that can pick that up. And if you had an automated pre-programmed list of plumbers, that you trust, or electricians or whatever, it automatically calls them and have them come in to fix the issue, right, while you're away. And I think those are the types of technologies. And that's just another example that I thought of, and I thought I'd share that with you. Or we have sewer backup, right? How many times there's flooded, basement is flooded, and a lot of people who don't go to the basement don't realize it, and then 2 days later when they go and they realize, oh man, there's a lot of water. So a lot of things like that are out there. So essentially, I was talking about the kind of the savings, the benefit of the smart cities, and one of the benefits I talked about was the actual, the savings in time by automating a lot of these mundane tasks that we currently involve our time is automated. By automating a lot of those tasks, it will give some of that time back to us. And so I'm going to spend the rest of the presentation talking about really, so that's all sounds exciting. How do we get there, and who are the enablers who are going to help us do that? So the reason I spend a lot of time thinking about it is because, like I said, our company does spend a lot of time with the utilities. And I think naturally there need to be enablers, because every instrument that's going to be deployed or being deployed will ultimately need power, right? And telecom utility needs to be involved, because we will need a network for all those devices to interconnect. and obviously once you've got all these devices out there, and there was a comment Danny made about 5G, and certainly a lot of that technology is going to come, and we're seeing some early deployments of 5G in some Asian countries, but essentially you need to be able to real-time capture data. I think some technologies are there for many of the applications I talked about that can be done with current technology, but when you're talking about being able to do, for example, traffic monitoring, instead of running fiber to every single camera, which is not very likely, you will need to make it real time. You'll need to be able to have a robust network like 5G, and certainly as those networks get deployed, you'll be able to gather a lot of that data at a larger scale, and then you will need the computing power behind the scenes, right? Churning through that data and trying to make sense of it. So I think one thing that picture highlights to me is that, so if we're gonna take our cities and our world as we know it, and the underpinning of that world is the utilities that we know, especially the telecom and electrical utilities, because those are pretty key ingredients. And if we're going to layer on all these additional services on top of that to grow, to go to that future that we talked about, then that network better be very resilient, right? It needs to be much, much more resilient, much more reliable than it is today. If we're going to start depending for our life to see, and if these autonomous vehicles are going to be driving out there, right, dependent on this communication to figure out where they need to go and process all that information, well, that network better be very, very robust, right? So that's the reliability that we're talking about. And not just that, so I think as a lot of engineers and designers and folks that will help shape some of that future who are in this room. I think what we need to, the project that we're working on, or at least start asking some of these questions, is that what does that future network needs to look like? And I think that future network, I think what the demand we're gonna make of that future network is we want it to have basically unlimited demand, because we want to be able to connect unlimited devices. I don't want to be limited by how many devices in my home or mobile devices wherever I can connect, right? Nobody wants to be limited, so we want that capacity to be there. and we want that network to be so resilient that I don't care. I mean, yeah, flooding, climate change, whatever, that's not my concern, right? You still want power, you still want your communication to be there whether it's flood or not. So I don't think that will no longer be an excuse for a network to be down. And tied to that, I think if there is an outage, people expect correspondence that tells them that when is that power coming back. It's no longer that, we're getting to it, we'll get to you. No, people want to know, because their life, their activities, their things are depending on that network to be available. And if it is down, they need to know when it is coming back. So there's a whole customer interaction scenario, or how we engage with the residents that will need to change. And of course, it needs to be secure, right? We were chatting earlier during lunch. That's a huge risk, and certainly there's a lot of development, a lot of thought processing, a lot of protection that needs to be put in place, and we don't have those answers figured out yet, and hopefully we will. And I think the other expectation that has really changed, even from our parents, is that we need that network and that power to be available anywhere, right? I don't care if I'm hiking in Kananaskis or not. I need power. I need my communication. I don't care if I'm camping up in Yukon in a remote island. The expectation is that it needs to be there. And I think for us, for people to meet those expectations, it's going to be difficult, but it's doable. That's where we need to go.
What's the point of going to Canada?
So who are those enablers? So clearly, the partners for this transition need to be, it needs to start with the municipalities, right? I think they won't necessarily be in the driver's seat, but they need to figure out the current business models don't allow them to play in this creative field, right? And to be innovative, whether it's a municipality, whether it's a utility, whether it's government. A lot of these agencies are not really paid. They are paid to provide a reliable, stable service. They're not really paid to take risks. When they take risks, when they try to be innovative, and if something goes wrong, they get in trouble. So right now, our regulations don't allow them. So same thing with municipalities. They've got a business model that they need to work with. So they need to spend a lot of that time figuring that out. And I already talked about the role of the utilities. They've got an important role. And obviously, the technology development companies, right? I mean, they're the ones who will be. I mean, so the municipalities they can help define some of the use cases. They can help figure out how they're going to pay for those appliances to bring some of those solutions. But the development is going to happen by the technology firms, right? They're gonna say what is possible with current technology, what is not possible, or what is the time. And then I think, like I said in the beginning of my presentation, at the core of all of this transformation need to be residents. For it to be successful, it needs to be done in a way that people see value in it, they want to adapt, and whatever services that are offered, they don't care for your age, your education level, your profession, your social background. It needs to appeal to everybody, right? Those services need to be, and a lot of those answers are not going to get figured out overnight. So all these four people, they need to be talking, they need to be engaged, and it might take years, but a lot of the socialization aspect of what those services look like, how do they are people going to use them? They have to be done the right way, right? I mean, when Apple came, the beauty of that phone, you know, the only edge that Apple had over BlackBerry was it was so damn easy to use, right? So I think those questions need to be answered. But also there are certain important allies. Clearly the governments, whether it's provincial government or the federal government, clearly they need to make policies, they need to make appropriate regulations. Like I talked about right now, the regulations don't allow freedom enough space for you know these regulated entities to be created. So that needs to change. In addition, obviously repealing financing. So you know banks need to provide the financing. They need to get comfortable. They need to understand what this vision is and where things are headed, and why you know this why they need to start looking this as an investment opportunity. I think I spoke about the socialization piece. I think that's a huge role where academia can play a role in understanding, you know, how do you make systems that don't differentiate or don't discriminate against different people or, you know, different education level, different demographics, that diversity is included. Also, what are the implications of automation, right? In terms of there's a lot of risk about job losses and you know the perception of what does innovation and technology and automation means to people, right? So there's a lot of those questions that need to be answered and understood, and of course they will. But like I said, this is not a new journey, you know. And you know when typewriters went away, there weren't less jobs, right? You know, when factories got mechanized, there weren't less jobs. So I think a lot of that understanding, that knowledge, awareness needs to be created so that people are not worried. So that's more or less what I had for my presentation, and now I'd like to open it up for questions. I think we have a question and answer session.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then I will also like to leave you. So I will refer to some of the stuff I've written up on these topics. These are on LinkedIn and they've been published in some publications. But my LinkedIn is probably the easiest place to go find some of the stuff that I've written. Now the last one, digital strategies by utility, will be published here by end of this month. Hopefully, the Canadian Electricity Association is going to be publishing that. So so yeah, I continue to write on this stuff, and I've also provided my contact information if anybody wants to engage further. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
I have one question. So last time we had Dr. Barker here, and we had a very neat presentation on privacy implications of IoT, and lots of horrific stories on how these companies out there, they steal information through what we deem as smart devices that we bring to our home. So I wonder what's your thought, and you can comment on the privacy infringes and the data stealing that is happening out there now.
It's a very, very, very good question and a valid question. Certainly, there is going to be a lot of pain during transition, and whenever you're innovating, it's kind of like when I don't know if you guys, I think most of the people here in this room will remember when initially Windows came out. You guys remember it used to crash all the time, that we would lose data, and we would lose our work. It used to be such a fun.
It still does.
Yeah. But it's gotten so much better, right? And I was actually driving yesterday, and I heard a bit of a noise in my car. I was like, this reminds me of the time we used to replace mufflers. Do you guys remember? Replacing mufflers used to be a thing. I don't know what changed. They don't seem to give up as much. So I think as technology evolves and gets mature, and certainly we're in a period where a lot of these things are coming in, pretty much everybody, even the best of people who are supposed to have answers, right? Like, who hasn't been hacked? Yahoo Yahoo, Google, Facebook, MasterCard, banks, government, NASA, right? FBI, right? So I think, so certainly there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I have no doubt those questions are going to get answered, and I think something like blockchain is probably one of those answers that automates a lot of that transaction and makes the transaction much more secure. So there's going to be many other things like that that we don't even know yet. I know that the future that I painted, I have no doubt that we're going to head in that direction, just because opportunity is there and people are going to go for it. There's going to be obstacle, and security is a big obstacle. But we're going to solve that problem. This thing crept on us. It slowly crept on us, right? Over maybe a 10-year period, right? Somehow we became so used to trusting Google and Apple and Microsoft that they have every information about us, right? Their credit cards, or I don't know, I don't even know. They probably have more information about me than I do myself. We trust them with that information.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Well, so that was my point.
Let's face it, I mean, do you know who you are financially? How can you possibly know 3 billion other people and make comparisons? You can't.
Google knows my wife and my kids better than I do, right? So I think
Yeah.
my point with that conversation was that this thing, we have no choice today. We're hanging on to it, and we are making a choice to hang on to it. We can certainly drop it, stop using it, but we are making an active choice to use it because we see the benefit that comes from using it greater than the risk. Same thing with the vehicles that we drive. There's thousands of people that die in car accidents every day, right? But we have become accustomed to, we have accepted that as a level of risk. We have accepted that our credit card is going to get hacked, our email is going to get hacked, and we have accepted that. So I think some part of that is never going to go away, no different than a robbery. Like when I'm walking down the street, I'm exposed. Someone can come rob me, someone can stab me, someone can kill me. I'm exposed, but I have become comfortable to a point that I'm comfortable walking down the street. And I think that's where, if it's done the right way, and I think Facebook's and Google's and Apple have done it the right way, to the point that they have gotten up into our lives so much that we don't want to let go of it. So I think there's a right way to do it. There's a whole set of other applications that tried to come, and we never trusted them. They never worked. They were issues, and we never adopted them. Right? Yes. Is that a question?
So in one of your slides there, you talked about supercomputing. Even though we have a lot of power in our pocket, the strength of an Apple or a Google or a Microsoft comes from the fact that they concentrate their collected data in like a super center. So you now have a domination of centralized computing and database centers, whereas we were always told that the power in our pocket is freeing us from that domination by a central single entity. Yet what I see there is you're saying that we're reverting back to these centers of computing power, even though we have so much more power in our pockets.
Yeah, because the reason we're doing that is because there was a discovery made that we like being able to access the documents that I have on my home computer. I can access them anywhere where I am. Do you remember about maybe 5, even 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, if there was something on your laptop or desktop at home, you couldn't access it. But now we don't have that issue. Information. So again, it was a transaction that we made. For that feature, being able to access our data anywhere where we needed it,
But
we
we're
gave
not,
that access to
but
them.
we're not truly accessing our data on our computer. In many cases, we have mirrored our data on the cloud, and we've abrogated our responsibility for who owns the cloud, and then we just have a subscription to to the cloud, and then we have suddenly our access to that data.
Yeah, so I mean, this is really, so if you, I'm gonna get a little bit philosophical here, but if you look at the history of humanity and, you know, the civilization come up and down and different countries shift up and down, I mean, what really happens? What leads to that transformation? What leads to that transformation is that certain societies, they adopt the new knowledge, new ways of thinking, and they're able to move forward. There are other nations or people who don't. I don't know if you know, like in the early 1900s in Turkey, they said that the books that are being published, Western books, Turkey was a very dominant power. They said they're bad. They're bad for people. People shouldn't be reading Western books. There was an active decision made. Even when trains came out, people said there was a God's devil, that it spits on fire, which is what devil is supposed to do. So my point was that these decision processes of transformation, of making choice, they're always happening. And I'm afraid that if certain societies that don't adapt will stay behind, and certain other ones that give up that freedom, because that is what we're doing, right? If you want Tesla to be driving my vehicle autonomously, I'm giving up that freedom to be able to drive, right? I'm giving up my life to somebody else. But we have done that. When we go to a doctor, we're being operated on, we make that choice. I can die with that disease, or I can be in pain, or I'm gonna go give my life to somebody else. When I'm making someone else is making food for me. Back in the day, 700 years ago, most people used to eat at home. But now, eating out is a common occurrence. We're actually trusting someone else to eat our food, to make food for us, and we're gonna eat it. So we have been giving up that freedom over and over and over, and I have no doubt that if there's always a trade-off, and I think where we see value, people are gonna make that trade-off.
But I think some of your examples might be incorrect in the way, one of the reasons why we can go out to the restaurant and eat the food is because we have now established a regulatory environment that is actually making sure the food in the restaurant is actually edible for us. And whereas in the computing world, we're abrogating that data responsibility, and there isn't a regulatory environment for much of what's happening in the regulatory world. So the protections that are implicit to us going to a restaurant are not the same as us going, for instance, putting our data in a cloud or putting our money in Bitcoin.
But those regulations were not always there.
No, but when they weren't
came
there,
over time.
no, but when they weren't there, we didn't go to the restaurants as often as we do today.
Sure, but over years, as the regulation came, we felt comfortable with it. We became more comfortable with it, right? So what I'm saying is that I think something similar is going to happen here as well. This is not new that we're getting newer technology. We've always been getting new technology. The wheel was a new technology at one point in time, right? So my point is that whatever that comfort level is, if these companies want to make money, and if people are fearful and they don't want to adapt those, and governments, they're going to elect a government who's going to legislate them, right? We're gonna come fearful election comes. So that's how democracies work. That's how regulations get brought in. How long that's going to take, I'm not sure, but whatever that right level is, I think will happen.
Yeah, quick question about because you're talking about smart cities and your roadmap, specific Calgary or in Alberta. What is your projection on when can we go there, and what the resources or the talents that we need for businesses like ours, or we will be prepared for? What do you think? How many years from now, and are the talents also ready for this one?
Yeah, so we're actually in a stage where right now pretty much every year I talk to a lot of cities and utilities and technology firms as well, and pretty much everybody is busy trying to identify what those use cases are. So they're trying to figure out what are some of the first services, what is the low-hanging fruit, what are some of the things that we can automate fairly easily, that while we don't have a lot of money to pay for them, we can chip away some funds of money and develop some solutions at a small incremental level to see what benefit it brings. So that's where a lot of the cities are at that stage. Now, there are certain other cities that are certainly, a little bit further ahead than, in general, our cities in Alberta are quite advanced in some ways, but in some other ways, for example, like I love the City of Calgary app where if you've got an issue in your neighborhood, like I reported, there was some grass needed to be mowed in our neighborhood that wasn't mowed, and I'm able to type it in, and I actually they respond very quickly. I've used it like 3-4 times, and every time they respond. So I don't know many other cities who have that. So certainly there are applications like that. Another application you guys might have heard that NMAX is looking at a pilot project to enable dual flow of electricity. Right now it's can only be one way, so they're looking to do that. The project in downtown Calgary. There's also projects. I know I sit on the board at the Alex that they've got an app where people can report if they see a homeless person on an app. If they see a homeless person somewhere, they can mark where that homeless person was spotted. Because it's hard for nonprofit agencies to know where the homeless people are, especially on a cold night or whatever. Right? They have no, they can drive up and down trying to find it. But if people then they can report it, then